We met in the most random, movie-like way you can imagine. I was standing in line at a food truck festival, waiting on some overpriced tacos, when she tapped me on the shoulder to ask if I knew whether they had anything vegetarian. I had no clue, but I told her they probably did and offered to let her cut in front of me while she decided. She laughed, said no thanks, and we ended up chatting for nearly half an hour while waiting for our food. She had this easy energy about her, funny, curious, a little sarcastic in that way that makes you feel like she's testing you to see if you can keep up. I like that. I gave her my number before we went our separate ways. I didn't expect much to come of it, but she texted me later that evening. Turns out those tacos weren't vegetarian, but the company made up for it. We started dating not long after that. Coffee dates turned into Sunday brunches, then weekend getaways. Within a year, we were inseparable. We moved in together about 18 months after meeting. She brought in her antique mirrors and throw pillows, and suddenly my very average bachelor pad had a personality, her personality. Honestly, it looked better that way. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony up in the mountains. Just family and close friends, crisp air, and a lot of happy tears. She wore this vintage-inspired lace dress, and I remember thinking, there's no way this moment will ever feel real. But it did. It was all real. Now we live in a quiet suburb just outside the city. It's the kind of neighborhood where people wave when they walk their dogs, and the barista knows your name by the third visit. Our house is modest but cozy, 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a patio where we sometimes have dinner when the weather's nice. I work in finance. I've been with the same regional bank for years now, and Vanessa runs a small interior design business. She mostly freelances and does consultations, but she's got that eye. You know? The kind where she can walk into a room and immediately know where everything should go. Our home looks like something out of a magazine, and that's entirely her doing. We have a daughter, Emma. She's 13 now, too smart for her own good, and always has music playing in the background, even while doing homework. She's got Vanessa's eyes and her stubborn streak, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little wrapped around her finger. Our life is comfortable, familiar. It's that kind of rhythm you get after years together, shared routines, knowing glances, Sunday grocery runs, and sleepy Monday mornings. We go on a couple of vacations a year, nothing crazy, usually the coast or a cabin for the weekend. Vanessa loves spontaneous road trips, and I go along, even when I grumble about the GPS. If you ask me to sum it up, I'd say we're just one of those couples who found a groove and settled into it. Nothing flashy, nothing wild, just a steady, shared life. Most mornings start with the sound of Vanessa's espresso machine hissing in the kitchen. She's got this thing about making coffee just right, uses one of those fancy milk frothers and grinds the beans fresh every morning. I'm more of a pour it and go kind of guy, but she always makes us both a cup before I head out. Mine's in a thermal mug with a note sometimes scrawled on the lid in Sharpie, "Don't fall asleep in the meeting," or "You forgot your lunch yesterday." Again, our schedules are kind of staggered. I leave around 7:30 for work, and she usually gets started around 9 or 10, depending on whether she has a client meeting or is doing a home consult. Her studio is a converted bedroom upstairs, all color swatches and design magazines and plants she somehow keeps alive. She's always been good at turning a space into something warm. We don't really eat breakfast together during the week, but dinners are usually a sit-down thing unless one of us is swamped. Vanessa likes cooking when she's in the mood, and when she is, she's great at it. But just as often it's takeout from the Thai place down the road or those frozen pasta bags we swear we'll stop buying. Emma gets home from school around 4, headphones in, always mid-conversation with her friends or filming something for TikTok. She's at that age where everything we say is either embarrassing or so dramatic, but she still hangs around the kitchen when we're talking. Pretends not to be listening but definitely is. She's smart, book smart, and people smart, and has this wry little smile she flashes when she thinks she's figured something out before you have. Weekends are a mix of errands, cleaning, and small adventures. Vanessa loves antique shops and farmers markets. I usually get dragged along, not that I mind, honestly. Watching her negotiate over a vintage lamp like she's on some HGTV show is entertainment in itself. Sometimes we drive out to the lake, grab sandwiches, and sit by the water doing absolutely nothing. Those are the quiet moments I hold on to. Our social life is normal. We host dinner now and then, mostly with other couples from the neighborhood or families from Emma's school. Vanessa has a book club, though I'm convinced it's more wine than reading. I've got a small golf group at work, and every couple of months we do poker nights. Nothing high stakes, just an excuse to unwind. We've been together long enough that we don't really need to talk to fill the space. Sometimes we're just sitting on opposite ends of the couch, her flipping through design blogs while I'm watching a game. And that silence feels perfectly full. Not the kind of silence you fill, the kind you grow into. All in all, it's a comfortable, well-worn life. Maybe even a little too routine, but I didn't mind that. I always thought there was something beautiful about knowing exactly where your feet are every morning. No surprises, no sudden turns. Of course, that's the thing about comfort zones. Vanessa always said the key to a good home was balance. Not just in the design, though, of course, she obsessed over that, but in how everything worked together. How people moved through the space. How routines didn't clash, but overlapped in a kind of dance. And that's what it felt like most days, a quiet, steady dance between the three of us. I handled mornings, packed Emma's lunch, made sure she didn't forget her laptop, drove her to school if she missed the bus, which was often, let's be honest. Vanessa handled evenings, homework check-ins, dinner when she wasn't working late, helping Emma prep for presentations or school events. We had our lanes, and we rarely swerved out of them. I think that's what made our household feel so smooth. There were no dramatic highs, but no deep valleys either. Just that slow, humdrum middle. Sometimes, I catch myself wondering if that was a good thing. I grew up in a house that was anything but predictable. Parents fighting, bills unpaid, always waiting for the next thing to go wrong. So, predictability? It felt like luxury. Vanessa worked from home most days, though she'd sometimes meet clients on site. Her schedule was flexible, which made her the default, available parent for Emma. School calls, dentist appointments, teacher meetings, all filtered through her. She liked being involved in Emma's life, but more in a managerial sense than an emotional one. She loved her, no doubt, but Vanessa wasn't the cuddly type. She was the make a schedule, color-code the calendar kind of mom. Our bedroom was her sanctuary. Minimalist, but warm. Soft lighting, always fresh linens, and no TV. She hated distractions in the bedroom. She claimed it helped us connect better. I didn't mind it. I'd gotten used to winding down by reading or scrolling on my phone with earbuds in. Some nights we talked for a bit, shared our daily highlights. Other nights we just curled into our own sides and drifted off. On the surface, everything looked solid. Emma was thriving in school, my career was on track, Vanessa had her creative outlet and enough clients to keep her busy. We had family vacations once or twice a year. Nothing extravagant, usually a week at the coast or a cabin in the mountains. Those trips were some of my favorite memories. Just the three of us, away from the schedules and the noise, being a family. We weren't flashy. We didn't post our lives all over social media. We weren't the couple that threw lavish parties or traveled to Bali. But I used to look around during dinner, the clink of cutlery, Emma chatting about her science project, Vanessa sipping her wine with that content little smile, and think, yeah, this is it. This is the life I always wanted. And for a long time, I really believed we were the kind of couple that would grow old together. I believed that the foundation we'd built, all the quiet habits, the shared responsibilities, the laughter and the laundry and the late-night takeout, would be enough to carry us through anything. I had no idea what was coming. But at that point, I didn't question anything. Not yet. It started with little things. Not big red flags. More like flickers of something I couldn't quite name. I remember the first time I noticed it. Vanessa had always been a talker. She'd tell me about her clients. The good, the difficult, the downright weird. She'd go on about color schemes, textures, how a sofa can ruin a room if it's even a few inches off center. I'd listen, or at least nod in all the right places. But over the past few weeks, that chatter started fading. She got vague. I'd ask how her day went, and she'd just shrug and say, "Oh, the usual." No stories. No complaints. Just silence. Like I wasn't worth the words anymore. And then there was her phone. Vanessa never used to be secretive with it. It'd be face up on the counter, pinging with texts from clients or Pinterest notifications. Now, I'd see her tilted away when I walked into the room. Sometimes she'd take calls in the bedroom with the door closed, soft, hushed tones I couldn't make out. I asked once, jokingly, "Planning a surprise party without me?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Client stuff? You wouldn't care." Maybe I wouldn't. But it felt like I was being pushed further and further out of her world. I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe she was just stressed. I even Googled things like signs your spouse is emotionally burnt out, instead of what I actually wanted to search. Because the truth? I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. I didn't want to admit that the comfort we'd built, the routines, the calendar, the bedtime silence, might have turned into camouflage. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and realized she wasn't in bed. I walked out to find her on the couch, curled up with her phone. She didn't see me at first. I could see the glow from the screen reflecting in her eyes. She looked so focused, smiling a little. I stepped closer and she flinched, quickly locking the phone. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Didn't want to wake you." I didn't say anything. Just stood there for a second too long. Then I nodded and went back to bed. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made my coffee. Kissed my cheek. Like she hadn't spent part of the night somewhere else, in more ways than one. I didn't confront her. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who snoops, who accuses without proof. But something inside me was shifting. A restlessness. A quiet doubt that started to linger even in the normal moments. She laughed at something on her phone during dinner, then turned the screen away when I leaned in. "Just Emma being dramatic," she said. Except Emma was sitting across the table. Not on her phone. Not saying a word. That was the moment I knew something was off. I didn't know what yet, and I didn't know how deep it ran. But I'd stopped believing the story I was being shown. The cracks were too sharp to ignore. And once you start looking for them, you start seeing them everywhere. The first time I noticed the money missing, it was just a line item on our joint credit card statement. A purchase from some boutique shop downtown. The kind of place that sells hand-poured candles and designer sunglasses with price tags that make your stomach turn. At first, I assumed it was a client gift. Vanessa would do that sometimes. Pick up something small to impress a homeowner or thank someone for a referral. I brought it up casually over dinner, not accusing, just curious. "Hey, what was that $280 charge at that place on Grand?" She barely looked up from her pasta. "Oh, just some samples I needed for a project. Textiles. You know." I didn't know, but I let it go. I trusted her. But then it happened again, and again, and the amounts got harder to ignore. $400 here, $600 there. New names on the statements too. Restaurants I'd never heard of. One charge for a jewelry store, not some cheap chain, either, but the kind with security guards and glass cases. So I started watching more closely. One night, after she went to bed, I pulled up the online account and went through every transaction from the last 3 months. I sat there in the dark with my laptop humming, scrolling through page after page of charges I didn't recognize. Some were small, $40, $60, but they added up. I'd never been the suspicious type, but something didn't sit right. I tried to think logically. Maybe she was just stressed and retail therapy was her way of coping. Maybe she was spoiling herself. God knows she deserved it, working long hours, juggling clients and Emma and the house. But Vanessa wasn't impulsive like that. She liked quality, not quantity. She didn't throw money around for no reason. I asked her about it the next morning. Played dumb, like I hadn't been staring at our bank account at 2 a.m. "Hey, just checking in on our spending. Are we good with the credit card? Some of the charges look a little high." She was brushing her hair in the mirror, didn't pause for a second. "Yeah, I've been putting some work stuff on there. I'll reimburse the account after I bill the client. Should we open a separate card for your business? Might make things easier." She hesitated then. Just a flicker. But it was enough. "Maybe. I don't know. It's fine for now." It wasn't fine, though. Not when I checked our savings and realized we were a few thousand lower than I expected. I keep a detailed spreadsheet for our finances. Always have. That's my thing. I know what should be there and what shouldn't. And something wasn't lining up. I thought about bringing it up again, but part of me didn't want to start a fight. Lately, even the smallest questions made her defensive. Like I was interrogating her instead of trying to understand what was going on. So I stayed quiet. I watched. And I started to notice more. New clothes I hadn't seen her buy. Packages arriving that she quickly whisked into her studio before I could ask what they were. Her phone always face down. Her passwords changed. I felt it in my chest, that sinking feeling, like something was slipping out of reach. Something she didn't want me to see. And I didn't know if it was me, or the money, or something else entirely. But I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer part of the full picture. A little notebook in the drawer next to my desk. I jot down the names of restaurants that popped up on the credit card. The time she said she was working late versus when she actually got home. At first, it felt ridiculous, like I was becoming some paranoid husband from a bad drama series. But once you start paying attention, you can't stop. I noticed how she never invited me to her client meetings anymore. She used to, especially if the job was big, or the client wanted a second opinion. But now, everything was always too last minute, or not worth the drive. She even stopped showing me photos of her projects, which was strange because she used to love getting my feedback, not because she needed it, but because she liked including me in what she did. One Tuesday night, she left for what she said was a consultation with a couple renovating a lake house. She came back 3 hours later, no design folder, no samples, nothing in her hands at all. Just a vague story about how they had nothing ready yet. Then there was the weekend. She said she was helping a friend choose wallpaper. She was gone most of the afternoon, came back giddy, like she'd had the time of her life. I asked who the friend was. She said, "You wouldn't know her, just someone from my gym." Vanessa doesn't go to the gym. Hasn't in over a year. Emma started picking up on the tension, too. Kids always know more than we think. She'd ask why Mom was gone so much. Why she was glued to her phone. One night she even said, "Why doesn't Mom like hanging out with us anymore?" And I had to pretend that everything was fine, that Vanessa was just busy, while my stomach twisted in knots. I'd lie awake some nights, watching the glow of her phone as she scrolled in bed, screen tilted slightly away from me. Her face was always so blank. Whatever she was looking at never made her laugh, never made her frown. Just long stretches of silent scrolling, and then she'd turn her back and fall asleep. I didn't know what I was looking for. Proof? A confession? Maybe just some crack in the surface that would give me permission to say, this isn't normal. Something is wrong. But all I had were questions. And the worst part wasn't even the suspicion. It was the silence that grew between us. The way she'd brush off my concerns with a kiss on the cheek and a half-hearted, "You worry too much." The way she'd get annoyed if I asked where she'd been. The way I started to feel like a stranger in my own home, like someone watching their marriage through a glass wall, unable to reach through. There was no big blow-up, no fight, just distance. And that distance was growing. Quietly, steadily, like a tide pulling back before a storm. By the time fall came around, our house felt cold even when it wasn't. It was strange how little things started feeling so heavy. The morning routines that used to hum with quiet rhythm now felt brittle, scripted. Vanessa had begun leaving earlier and coming home later. At first, she'd let me know, a quick text saying she was grabbing coffee or had a rescheduled client meeting. But lately, I'd just hear the door click behind her, and I wouldn't know if she'd be gone for an hour or the rest of the afternoon. Sometimes she wouldn't even say goodbye. Just the rustle of keys and then silence. She'd started taking more me time. Spa appointments, gallery visits, yoga classes that didn't match any on the schedule I found online. Once, she said she was meeting an old college friend for lunch. I smiled and asked who. She said, "You wouldn't remember her," and kissed the air near my cheek. I couldn't help but notice she was wearing new heels and a dress I hadn't seen before. She looked good. Not just put together, intentional. I stood there for a few seconds after the door closed, unsure what had just happened but knowing, somehow, that I was no longer part of it. The financial bleed continued. At first, it was just credit card charges. But then I noticed that our joint savings account, the one we'd been building for years, mostly for Emma's future or maybe a bigger place someday, was being slowly drained. The transactions weren't massive, but they were steady. Withdrawals. Transfers. Enough to throw off my careful spreadsheets. When I brought it up again, trying to mask my concern as curiosity, she rolled her eyes and told me she was just moving some money around to cover business expenses. She said she'd handle it, that I didn't need to micromanage. I wasn't micromanaging. I was trying to understand how, in a matter of months, our life, the one we had built together, quietly and carefully, had become something that no longer felt familiar. I kept telling myself that people go through phases. Maybe she was feeling unfulfilled. Maybe it was just burnout. But then I'd find a receipt tucked in the console of her car for a dinner for two, an expensive dinner, at a place she swore she hadn't been to in years. Or a designer cologne charge under her name at a department store that definitely wasn't for me. I started withdrawing in subtle ways. Less conversation, fewer questions. Not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid of what I'd hear if I pushed too hard. Every time I asked something simple, "Who were you out with? Did you need all these things on the card?" She'd act like I was accusing her of something, like I was some overbearing detective instead of the man who had built a life with her for over a decade. She'd sigh, or get quiet, or laugh in that dismissive way that felt more like a slap than a joke. And then there were the nights. More often than not, she'd go to bed long after I did. I'd hear the faint clack of her keyboard downstairs, or the hushed tones of a phone call she thought I couldn't hear through the vents. When I did stay up, pretending to read or work, she'd curl up in the corner of the couch, legs tucked under her, screen glowing against her face. She never looked over at me anymore. Like I'd become part of the furniture, a fixture of the house instead of her partner in it. One evening, I decided to make dinner, a real one, not the usual frozen stuff. I set the table, lit a couple candles, played that playlist she used to love back when we danced barefoot in the kitchen. When she walked in, she looked surprised, like the idea of us sitting down together was foreign. She gave me a polite smile, kissed my forehead, and said, "Oh, I actually already ate. Sorry, I should have texted." She disappeared into the bedroom before I could respond. I sat at the table for a while, listening to the music, the candles flickering in a room that now felt far too quiet. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing her. I was already gone. She just hadn't told me yet. I wasn't supposed to be home that day. I'd been scheduled for a late meeting downtown, but the client canceled last minute. I didn't even text Vanessa to let her know I was coming home early. It didn't occur to me. All I was thinking about was how tired I was, how nice it'd be to grab a sandwich, lie down for a bit, maybe hear Emma's voice, and feel something normal again. I pulled into the driveway around 3:45. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Vanessa wasn't home, or at least, her car wasn't in the driveway. Emma must have just gotten back from school. I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and was about to call out to her when I heard voices coming from upstairs. Teenage chatter, overlapping and quick, the kind of chaotic rhythm that only exists when adults aren't in the room. I heard Emma and two of her friends. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but something in their tone made me pause just at the foot of the stairs. Laughter. Then one of her friends said something about that hot guy your mom hangs out with. And Emma, my daughter, replied, "Ugh, I know. It's so gross. Like, does she think I don't see what's going on? He's always picking her up in that stupid car. She keeps calling him her design partner, but come on." I didn't move. The other girl giggled. "Does your dad know?" Emma snorted. "Please. My dad doesn't have a clue. He still thinks she's working late and shopping for clients. She literally uses his credit card to buy that guy stuff. Watches, shoes. She even bought him AirPods once. My dad is such a loser. He's like the last person to know." The room went silent for a beat. Then one of the girls said something I didn't even catch because my ears were ringing. My hands were cold. My vision narrowed into a tight tunnel, and all I could do was stare at the wall in front of me like it might split open and offer me a different reality. I backed away from the stairs slowly, careful not to make a sound. My legs carried me into the kitchen on their own, though I don't remember moving. I just stood there for what felt like forever, one hand gripping the back of a chair, trying to keep myself upright. That's how I found out. Not from a confrontation. Not from a confession. From my daughter. Talking to her friends like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like I was the only one who didn't see it. And that's what gutted me the most. That everyone else, even Emma, knew. That she didn't come to me. That I'd become a walking joke in my own house. I didn't cry. Not then. I sat down at the table, listening to the girls laugh and talk upstairs like they hadn't just detonated a bomb in the center of my life. I felt hollow. Like I'd stepped outside my body and was watching someone else's pain from a distance. Everything suddenly made sense. The money, the secrecy, the late nights, the distance, the perfume, the dinners I wasn't invited to. Every little moment that didn't feel right clicked into place, and what was left behind wasn't confusion. It was betrayal. Pure and complete. And now that I knew, I couldn't unknow. I had been patient. I had been understanding. I had held back every instinct to accuse because I didn't want to believe the worst. But now? Now I couldn't see anything but the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling while Vanessa slept beside me as if nothing was wrong. As if she hadn't taken everything we'd built and hollowed it out behind my back. She shifted once or twice, murmuring something incoherent, her hand brushing my arm. I didn't move. I just lay there, feeling the heat of her skin and wondering how long I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. I got up before sunrise. I didn't need more time to think. I needed action. I've worked in finance for almost 15 years. I know how money moves, how to protect it, how to hide it. I also know how to cut someone off cleanly, legally, without a trace of panic. By 10 a.m., I'd frozen every account with her name on it. Canceled her credit cards. closed out the joint savings and moved the funds to a private account she couldn't access, changed all the passwords, banking, investments, even utilities. She wouldn't know anything until she tried to swipe a card or log in to move more money to her little shopping fund for the man she was sneaking around with. By noon, I had our lawyer on the phone. I didn't tell him everything yet, but I made it clear I wanted to begin divorce proceedings. He asked if I was sure. I told him I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. Emma was in her room. Vanessa was sitting at the dining table, flipping through her tablet. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, you're home early." I didn't return the smile. I took my coat off, hung it by the door, and walked into the kitchen. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steady. "I know." She blinked. "Know what?" I met her eyes. "About the affair. The money. Him." There was a flicker, just a flash in her expression. Like her mask slipped for half a second before she snapped it back into place. She tried to laugh. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Vanessa." I wasn't shouting. I didn't need to. I heard Emma talking to her friends yesterday. "I know everything. I know who you've been with. I know what you've bought him. I know you've been using my money to do it." She stared at me, stunned. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a second, I thought she might try to spin some wild story, but then she saw my face, really looked at me, and realized it wouldn't work. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's just talk about this." "No." I raised a hand, firm. "We're past talking." She stood up slowly, her voice shaking now. "Don't do this in front of Emma." I cut her off again. "She already knows." "You made sure of that. What she doesn't know is how quickly things can change. Starting now." Vanessa looked confused. I watched as she reached for her phone, tapped a few times, then froze. Her eyes widened. "My cards." "Gone," I said. "Accounts?" "Closed." "Access?" "Revoked." "You don't get to live in my house, spend my money, and lie to my face." "Not anymore." There was a beat of silence. She dropped the phone on the table. Her hands trembled. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem," I said quietly. "You'll figure it out. Just like you figured out how to sneak around while smiling in my face. You can't do this." "I already did." I walked to the base of the stairs and called up, "Emma, pack a bag." She came down a few minutes later, looking pale. She must have heard some of it from her room. I looked her in the eyes, my voice softening. "You're going to your aunt's for a while." "What about Mom?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "She's not staying here." Vanessa started to cry then, not tears of guilt, but frustration. Anger. She knew the game was over and that she had lost. I let her stand there in that silence. Let her feel the weight of everything she'd done. She packed a bag. Emma did too. I called my sister, explained just enough for her to understand that I needed this, needed them both out. She didn't ask questions. Vanessa didn't say goodbye. Emma did, though. She turned back at the door, eyes full of something I couldn't quite name, confusion, maybe shame, and whispered, "I'm sorry." I just nodded. The door closed behind them, and I was alone. Finally. Completely. And for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The house was quiet again. For days after they left, I found myself walking through each room like I didn't recognize it. Not because anything had changed, but because everything had. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It was still. Heavy, sure, but not unbearable. Just different. Like the calm after a storm, when you know everything's been torn apart, but at least now, you can start picking up the pieces. I spent the first weekend alone. No phone calls, no emails. I turned off the notifications from my bank account. I didn't care to see if Vanessa tried to access anything again. That bridge was gone. She hadn't called. Emma sent a few texts, brief ones, mostly checking in, a little unsure. I told her she was okay, that none of this was her fault, and that I needed time, but I'd always be here when she was ready. And then I just existed for a bit. I cooked for one. I did laundry and folded clothes that didn't belong to anyone but me. I slept diagonally across the bed because I could. I let the TV run too loud, and I didn't feel like I was interrupting anyone. It was lonely, sure, but it was my kind of lonely. Honest. Quiet. Undisturbed. 3 weeks passed before I ran into Claire again. She works in the same building as me, HR for a different firm on the 3rd floor. We used to talk sometimes in the elevator, small things. Quick hellos, good luck with your meeting, happy Friday. That kind of thing. She always smiled like she meant it, which stuck with me. I bumped into her in the lobby on a Tuesday. She held the elevator door for me, and I stepped in with my usual nod, ready to say something forgettable. But instead, she said, "You look different." I blinked. Different how? She tilted her head, smiling gently. Lighter. I don't know. Less like you're carrying the world. I didn't say much after that. We both got off on our floors, and I spent the rest of the day thinking about what she said. Lighter. Was that what this was? After all the chaos, all the heartbreak, had something actually lifted? We started seeing each other for coffee after that. It wasn't romantic, at first. Just two people talking. No expectations. Just breathing the same air, sharing the same tired office hallway laughs. She asked how I was doing. I told her the truth, in pieces. She listened without giving advice, which I didn't know I needed until she didn't try to fix anything. A month later, I invited her over. We made dinner together, or rather, I fumbled around the kitchen while she gave me instructions and teased my lack of knife skills. She didn't ask about Vanessa. She didn't look around like she was trying to piece together the ghost of a life that had recently burned to the ground. She was just there, in the present, and I found myself leaning toward that. We didn't sleep together that night. We sat on the couch, sipping wine, her legs tucked under her, and she fell asleep against my shoulder. I sat there for a while, letting the weight of her head press into me like an anchor. Not heavy, not intrusive, just real. Human. It's not some fairy tale. I'm not cured. There are still moments when I wake up in a cold sweat, remembering the sound of Emma's voice as she called me a loser without knowing I was there. There are still times I see a coffee mug Vanessa used to love, or find one of her scarves in a drawer I hadn't touched since spring, and something tugs at my chest. But I don't feel broken anymore. I feel open, wounded, but healing. Claire doesn't ask for more than I can give. And I think that's why I want to give her more, slowly, piece by piece. This isn't about revenge. It's not about proving I've moved on. It's about reclaiming something I didn't realize I'd lost, not love. Not yet. But something quieter. Something steadier. A life that's finally mine. Some endings don't look like the ones in movies. There's no big crescendo. No slow clap. No sweeping monologue that ties everything together neatly. Sometimes, it just ends in silence, and then, eventually, in peace. It's been a little over 4 months now. Vanessa and I are officially divorced. The paperwork came through last week, and I signed it in my lawyer's office with a kind of numb relief. I didn't feel triumphant, or angry, or vindicated. Just done. Like finishing a long book you never wanted to read in the first place. You close the cover, exhale, and slide it onto a shelf you never planned to open again. We haven't spoken much since she and Emma left. The last time was through the lawyers, logistics, property, the basics. She asked if we could talk one-on-one. I said no. There's nothing left for her to say that I haven't already heard in silence. And honestly, I'm not interested in making her understand what she destroyed. If she didn't feel the weight of it while she was doing it, my words won't make a dent now. Emma moved back in 2 weeks ago. It was awkward at first. The kind of awkward where you're both tiptoeing around the past, trying not to knock over anything fragile. She apologized properly this time. Said she didn't mean what she said, that she was angry, confused, caught between two versions of the same house crumbling at once. I told her I believed her. I also told her trust is a thing you build back slowly, brick by brick. We're building. Carefully. Claire's still in my life. We're not rushing anything. She doesn't ask me to define us. We go for long drives on the weekend, explore parts of the city I haven't seen in years, make fun of overly fancy coffee orders and bad reality shows. She brings me peace, not excitement, not distraction, but peace. And I didn't realize until recently how rare that is. I still have rough nights. Sometimes I'll wake up and feel the old weight pressed down again, like a phantom limb. The betrayal, the self-doubt, the questions I still don't have answers for. But they don't own me anymore. They visit, sure, but they don't live here. I've changed the house slowly. Not all at once. New paint in the bedroom. Threw out that awful rug Vanessa loved. Replaced some furniture. Not to erase her, but to reclaim the space. I've been filling it with things I like. Things that feel like me. The other night, I caught myself humming while I cleaned the kitchen, music playing low, windows cracked open. Just humming. Nothing dramatic. But in that moment, I realized I felt good. Not ecstatic. Not euphoric. Just good. And that's the part nobody tells you about rebuilding after betrayal. It's not about finding something better. It's about finding something real. Something yours. It's about waking up, looking in the mirror, and not seeing a shell of who you used to be, but someone solid. Someone scarred, maybe, but still standing. Would I change what happened, if I could? Of course. I wouldn't wish that kind of heartbreak on anyone, but I also wouldn't give back who I am now. I'm not the man who ignored the signs. I'm not the husband who gave and gave until there was nothing left. I'm the man who faced the collapse, sat in the rubble, and started laying new bricks. And this time, I'm building with my eyes open. Thanks for reading.